to Travel Weekly TV, where we go behind the scenes speaking to the industry's heavyweights. I'm Hoda from Travel Weekly, and Nick, you're here with us. Thank you so much for joining us.
A pleasure to be here, it really is. I've been coming to Australia privately for, I think it's 5 visits over 8 years. I love it, and now I'm here as chairman of Visit Britain.
Tell us a little bit more about Visit Britain and what you're doing in Australia in this particular occasion.
Well, Visit Britain is essentially the British National Tourism Agency, and our job, which is set out as in law, it's a statutory body, and our job, amongst other things, is to drive inbound visitors into the UK. So we're looking for international visitors to come to the UK. And I've got to tell you, the great place to be for that is Australia, because you are very fond of our country. We don't take that for granted, and we're over here to work very hard to persuade more of you to come and to continue to stay longer. And if I can say it bluntly, continue to spend good money with us.
Well, the Aussie traveller spends good money when they travel. They
very
really
much so. Do you know, they are spending, not only do they stay longer, they spend pretty much double the average, so you are very, very good customers. But we actually have huge links, don't we, between Britain and
Absolutely.
Australia. We are great mates, essentially, for all sorts of reasons. Little bit of sporting rivalry there, and that translates into both ways, into a love of coming to visit and stay. But I think it's also our job to work harder to and which is what we're doing with this trip, is to bring suppliers here with products and destinations on offer, show the huge choice that's available, working very closely, of course, with the travel agents. It's extraordinary that the high use of a travel agents here in Australia, I think it's one of the highest in the world, and therefore in some senses it's great to have those ongoing relationships, share with them all about the regions and the nations. Obviously people know about London, but there's so much more to it, and that's what we're doing.
And tell me a little bit more about your background before we get into Visit Britain. Where do you come from? Do you come from travel? How did you end up?
Well, I tell you, travel is well. My dad, he was RAF, Royal Air Force, so we got moved every 3 years, and we would go to different countries. That's what happens in the RAF. You get posted to different places, particularly then. So I kind of got used to travel from about the age of 3, I think it was, and that translated into minute I left school, I went doing what a lot of people did in what was the late 70s, putting out your thumb and hitchhiking around Europe, North Africa, all sorts of things, getting having quite a good time with it as well. I sort of say. Not quite the same these days, with people going off to the, if you're in Europe, you go over to the Far East, or you'll go to these amazing destinations which we couldn't reach. So I had an inbuilt love of travel. But I actually ended up working on the events side of events industry, which of course is the business visitor. We would be responsible for designing and building and putting on big events for business organisations, their sales conferences, things like that, around the world, and that is part of the visitor economy, of course.
Absolutely, that's travel.
And that's what really, I was travelling everywhere. I literally would look for an excuse to go and travel anywhere, either to visit the shows we were doing, or working on the shows, or just trying to meet new clients, and that's where the bug came from.
And tell me a little bit more about the politics side, because you did end up in politics at some stage.
I've always been fascinated by politics, and I had my own motivations, which I won't bore you with, but it was born out of frustration, because I was starting a business. I literally did it from a credit card. We didn't have much money and some good friends, and we kind of got together to form this business. And all the talk from the politicians was, and this was in the 80s, right? And it was like, oh, we're here to help young risk takers, and if you're a business, we'll help arrange loans for you. And of course, it was all rubbish. It just was rhetoric. And I got no help from them at all, and just went and did it ourselves. And I just thought to myself, one day I want to bridge that rhetoric. I want to bridge that gap where politicians were actually just professional politicians who'd never started or run anything except maybe a bath in their life. And I wanted to bridge that gap. So with a big business background behind me, or a long business background behind me, I went into politics at a relatively late age of around 50.
That's such an interesting array of different experiences. And you being at Visit Britain, what is something that you're very passionate about doing?
Well, first of all, I love our country. I think it's a great place. But I also I got involved essentially with the National Tourism Agency first because my brief time in politics, I realised that no one in government, and I would stick to that, no one in government fully understood what a tremendous industry tourism and the visitor economy was. They just saw tourism as a bucket and spade, or they saw it as a temporary job for people to get when they leave university. They had no idea that it is a fragmented industry, it's got lots of aspects to it. They had no idea that it was driving exports for the country, bringing people to visit our country is literally having free money walk through your door and spend it in your country because of the attractions. They didn't understand that the policy decisions they made would affect us, sometimes negatively, because they didn't understand what this business was. And it was my mission, if you like, to try and get policymakers to understand that they have a huge influence on an industry that actually, if they stop back for a moment, they would see it's, in our case, 9% of our GDP. That's changed. That's much better now. And I think at Visit Britain, our job is to advise government and drive those visitors in. And that's the right place to be.
For a lot of Australians, they've travelled to London, and most people will probably associate Britain with just London. But tell me a little bit more about what you're doing to really encourage the Australian tourist to explore more and to really see Britain.
Well, one of my jobs here is to learn and to listen. But let me tell you what the reality is of Australian visitors to our country at the moment when they come over. They are prized, they really are coveted, not just because they spend more, but actually one of the great characteristics of them is, yes, they go to London, they know about London, but something like 70% of them actually go out into the regions and nations of the country. A lot of them because they've got friends and family, and that's how it starts, but they behave like tourists and they go off and see and do things around the country. And that's the story we've got to tell more about, and I'll answer your question about what they can do. So we've come to Australia because it's a key market for us. It's one of our top 5 markets, but also because it won't be long before we're launching a really exciting marketing campaign, which is basically around screen tourism. We call it
Screen tourism?
now let me tell you what that means. It's based on all the locations. Great films are being made in the UK. I kind of think we're bigger than Hollywood, but all right, that's a bit of an overclaim. But we have hundreds of films being made that you would from TV. Bridgerton, we have the James Bond films.
Of course.
You had the Napoleon film. I could go on forever about Harry Potter. All of these,
right.
and they're made at these amazing locations. And what you're now finding is there's an industry building up around that, where these great tours, where you go and see the actual places where things were filmed, and you can get involved and engaged. It's really exciting. And they're all over the country. And the great thing is, Expedia, I think it was, said something like 50% of tourists want to go to a film location. But guess what it is? Yeah, but guess what it is for the Australians? When surveyed, 86% of them want to go to some of these destinations. So that's one of the reasons we're launching it. It's really quite exciting. It's going to be great fun. It's going to be a good campaign. I can't really tell you more than that because the content's all been worked up and the director's been chosen and all that stuff.
That's fantastic. Tell me a little bit more about when it's launching. So when can travel agents find out more?
Well, I to answer your question, there will be a programme of teasing and expectation in the run-up to the campaign.
Okay.
Don't hold me to this, okay? Don't write a letter of complaint to me. But I think we're talking very early next year.
Early 2025.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which I think is a key time. So what you will see, for example, is there will be. Let's take the digital side. You're going to see some. The principle behind it is we kind of look at the film, so you get a glimmer of what the film's all about, and then you see the location and the attraction of where to go. So it'll be a really interesting dimension about it is that then we will do it by genre. It'll be romance, it'll be thrillers, it'll be whatever it may be. And then we'll have influencers, social influencers promoting it across digital campaigns and all sorts of other press and media, which you know, is another story and way above my pay grade. So that is what we can do.
It's really exciting because there's a lot of
Did I tell you it's
places-
called set jetting? If you want to
Set
go and see
jetting.
these things,
Yes.
isn't that great? Oh, I love that title, but I always get it wrong. I still talk about jet setting.
Jet setting, set
Set
jetting.
as in film set,
Okay.
right? Is
You've
this
heard
working?
it here first. Set jetting.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, Nick, thank you so much for joining me on the
Pleasure.
couch, and thank you so much for watching Travel Weekly TV.